this. Right, so this outside edge, right, you see that just a thin cell all the way around the outside. That is Bowman's capsule. Right? The blob in the middle is glomerulus, and the two together, right? So the combination of two, this whole thing is a renal corpuscle. Right? So again, wherever you see a renal corpuscle, they are only present in the renal cortex. So what, just from this, you can tell this layer is renal cortex. Notice you can still see renal tubules. Right? Pretty much everything else on here is a renal tubule. And again, I can't tell if it's proximal tubule or distal tubule or what. So just renal tubule. So renal tubules are in both layers. The renal corpuscle, which you can barely see here, only present in the renal cortex. So if I go all the way to the outside, you know that the outermost layer is cortex. So when you can see the edge, it makes it even easier. But again, just anytime you can see a renal corpuscle, it has to be renal cortex. Way at the outside here, right, just this really thin fibrous layer on the outside, that's the renal capsule. So the capsule is really skinny on the kidney, but just the fibers around the outside sort of hold everything together. So this really thin layer of fibers is capsule. Right? From here on in, it's going to be renal cortex, and again, there's a renal corpuscle. So like I said, without having any context at all, right, what layer is this? Cortex or medulla? Cortex. What layer is this? Cortex. What layer is this? Medulla. Right? So you can just the absence of renal corpuscles tells you this is medulla. Right? So that's all still medulla there. Nobody cares, but those are collecting ducts. Questions? That should be a good one. Okay. On to male reproductive part.
What is the actual magnification of it? Like how many was that in that? Half a centimeter.
I don't know what the. I don't know if we have a slide on, like a slide. But you can kind of see them already. Right? That's a similar tubule. The big thing here, number one, the capsule. So the capsule means the same thing here did on kidney, just it's much, much thicker than it is on kidney. So all of that is a capsule. So now, hopefully when I zoom in, the seminiferous tubules will become obvious. It comes out here. And you can start to see it. I'll zoom in one more time. Right? That's one, and that's one, and that's one, and that's one. So all over the place. Pretty much everything here is a seminiferous tubule. Find the next one. This structure is a seminiferous tubule, and pretty much every cell here is a Sertoli cell. So that cell or that cell, right? All of these cells that are the wall of the tubule, those are Sertoli cells. And then in the lumen, right here in the middle, you can almost see their tails. That's the sperm, right? So this cell right here, or that one there, right? So the one right in the lumen, those are the sperm. And then the cells of Lydate then are like these guys right here, the ones in between the tubules. There's about 8 or 9 of them right there. Another pocket here. So the cells in between the tubules, those are cells of Lydate. The ones that are the wall of the tubule, those are Sertoli cells. Familiar enough, I hope. Let's see, the second thing we're going to do today is begin the anatomy on page 1. It's really hard to tell what you're looking at because it's a big pink and purple mass. The main thing you're looking for is a grafting follicle or mature follicle. So there's a couple of examples here. So this is a classic one here. So you see the oocyte in the center and this huge empty antrum here. So right, this is the same thing over here on this side. That is oocyte in the center. We just started together this thing. And this is works. That whole thing right there is a grafting follicle or mature follicle. This is another one. That's also a grafting follicle or mature follicle. Anytime you see the antrum, anytime you see the fluid-filled space, okay, so that's this and this and that, that's a grafting follicle. My guess is this is a follicle that just ovulated. That is, the ovum is missing, right? The oocyte's missing. What you saw the antrum here. In case you're wondering, this is a rabbit ovary. That's why there's a reason they reproduce like rabbits. It's not because they ovulate one at a time. But anyway, yeah, so look for the grafting follicle. Okay, so let's zoom in on this anyway. So again, so this whole thing is the grafting follicle. Oocyte at the center. Fluid-filled space is the antrum. And then outside of that, probably the best example is this. You can even see it here. See how there's sort of this medium-looking cells and teeny tiny cells? Those are going to be the primordial and primary follicles. Let me zoom in all the way. So they look like cells, but they are follicles. So the little tiny ones are the primordial follicles. So the smallest ones, very little surrounding tissue, those are primordial follicles, and then the slightly bigger ones here, right, they look like cells with a lot of cytoplasm. Those are primary follicles. Right, so you can almost draw a line, diagonally across there, and then down the left, all of these are primordial follicles. All of these are primary follicles. Questions on that? And on to gross anatomy. So we are on esophagus, right? Okay, so for obvious reasons, I call this the digestive board. Board with digestive stuff on it. You can see almost all of these things on the torsos. It's sort of easier to see it all at once on here. Remember, we've already seen some of the structures up here in the half heads, and you can actually see the beginning of the esophagus there too. So I'll start there. The esophagus is the posterior of the tubes here. Ouch. I used to have a finger, it's okay. Gloves with 5 fingers were extra. So when you're looking at the neck, right, the airway is going to be anterior, so the posterior tube is the beginning of the esophagus. In this case, it's easy because it is connecting the pharynx to the stomach. So this is esophagus. Remember, on some of the torsos separated off from the aorta, which is which. And that leads to the stomach. So that's stomach. There are lots of ways of talking about the stomach. The first of which is just the curves. And so, this outside edge, that whole big curve, that is greater curvature because it's the longer one. Right? And the inside one, the one facing the liver, that's the lesser curvature. And that's actually what the greater omentum is named for, right? The greater omentum because it hangs off the greater curvature of the stomach. Lesser omentum, which isn't on our list, but is going off the lesser curvature over to the liver. And then again, most of this stuff we talked about in lecture, so it's hopefully just reminders. But the first portion of the stomach, right, that is just where the esophagus comes in, about the size of a quarter, is the cardia. So the cardiac region is just right where the esophagus meets the stomach. So it is part of the stomach for that first portion. You draw a straight line across where the esophagus comes in, and everything above that is fundus. Central region is body. And then more or less at this turn, right, the portion closest to the small intestine, that's the pyloric region, or antrum, pyloric region. And just so you're, do it open as well, so cardiac region, fundus, body, pyloric region. All right, so you see the narrowing there? That's the pyloric sphincter. So pyloric sphincter is the transition from the stomach to the small intestine, from the pylorus to the duodenum. It doesn't have to be open to see that. Right, you see that slight narrowing there? That is the pyloric sphincter. So you have a transition from stomach to small intestine. And then when you open it up, right, the internal ridges, those are rugae. So the ridges inside the stomach are rugae. Let's see, greater omentum on this one, but we can already tell. No, you've already seen it, but remember, greater omentum, right, is the membrane covering the anterior side of the intestine. And small intestine. So small intestine, quite honestly, you're very unlikely to write it on the practical. Probably it's going to be one of the specific regions. It's possible. So, you know, yeah, this is small intestine. Essentially, you want to know the beginning and the end, and anything else is the middle. I know that was deep, right? Like, the beginning is the duodenum, right? So the first portion of the small intestine coming off of the stomach, that curve, that is duodenum. Right. The end, that is where the small intestine meets the large intestine, that's ileum. So just this very last portion as you follow the tube. And that means really anything else just sort of randomly in the middle is jejunum. So duodenum near the stomach, ileum near the large intestine, anything else is jejunum. And as always, just read the question, right? I mean, a pen right here that says name this organ, that is small intestine. Right? Pen right here says name this portion of the organ, that is jejunum. So again, you can just sort of, starting here and going backwards, as long as it's pretty close to the large intestine, that's ileum. Large intestine, again, you're pretty unlikely to actually write it. More likely to write a specific part of it. So starting here, that is at the transition between the small intestine and large intestine. So this is ileum coming up, and this is the beginning of large intestine. And you see that little narrowing there? That transition is the ileocecal segment, or ileocecal valve, right, where the ileum meets the cecum. So ileocecal valve is the transition from small to large intestine. And nobody cares. It's not actually a valve. It's just a narrow. You're welcome. Again, you can draw a straight line across, and this pouch hanging down is the cecum. So right, the food should be going up, so the backwater here is the cecum. So ileocecal valve, ileum leading into cecum. So this region is cecum. And usually hanging off of that, you're going to be able to see the appendix. So the appendix comes off of the cecum. From there, it's just follow the flow. Right? That is, from here going up, so coming up the right side of the body, this is ascending colon. Right? And crossing over from right side to left side, that is transverse colon, so coming across. The part coming down is descending colon. And then sigmoid, remember sigmoid means S-shaped, so it's hiding on this one, but we could do it this way. Right, so I'm going to take this one and flip it over. Right, you see that? The bendy part, right? So the bendy part of the large intestine is the sigmoid colon. And then the word rectum means straight. So as soon as it gets straight again, and that's essentially what you're seeing here, the straight portion there is rectum. Let's see, Haustrum and Taenia coli before I forget. So when you look at the large intestine, you can see it's organized into these pouches. Each of those is a haustrum. So haustra are the bag-like pouches here. And that's all, all throughout the large intestine. And then tinea coli just means ribbon of the colon. So you can probably guess already what that's going to be, right? This connective tissue that's running longitudinally. And there's a couple of these on the front and the sides and whatever else. But just the connective tissue running the length of the large intestine. That's tinea coli. Anal canal, anus, and external anal sphincter. So, quite literally at the end. And really, the easiest thing to look for here is the external anal sphincter. So, the external anal sphincter is going to be a big ball of muscle, right, that surrounds the anus or anal canal. So, you find the ball of muscle. That is external anal sphincter. And right, so that's from here to here. So that means anything inside of that is the anal canal. And so that bit of tube that sits inside the muscle is the anal canal. And the anus is simply the external opening. So the end of the canal, the opening at the literally end. I don't know why I say these puns, but I do. So the anus is at the end. Someone came up to me after class and asked me a question about menstruation. I answered your question, and somewhere along the way I said, no, that's the way it is, period. I felt shame, but I went gallbladder tucked up underneath that. Remember, inside the C shape of the duodenum is the pancreas, so inferior to the stomach. And it's been opened up here so you can see the duct, so pancreatic duct inside the pancreas. And one of the classmates is dissected the exact same way, where right, it's cut open, you can see the pancreatic duct. Right, any questions?
Renal medulla. Renal pyramid. Renal papilla. Minor calyx. Major calyx. Renal pelvis. Ureter. Juxtamedullary nephron, cortical nephrons, afferent arteriole, glomerulus, efferent arteriole, Bowman's capsule, podocytes, proximal convoluted tubule, descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct,
The mouth. So hard palate is the bone between the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. So the bone there is hard palate. And soft palate is just what you think. This, the non-bony part towards the posterior side, that's soft palate. And then the soft palate sort of keeps going until the dangly thing at the back of your throat there, that's the uvula. So the uvula is sort of like in cartoons they always show you like the punching bag at the back of the throat. That's uvula. And I will tell you now, I think it's happened every year, every semester since I've been here. Do not misspell this word. There's a really big difference between uvula and vulva. I'm just telling you. So that is uvula. Tongue, there you go, that's the tongue. But the papillae on there are really only visible on the plastinate, so we'll go through those in a second. But the tongue itself is clearly visible on the model there. All right, the three salivary glands. So to see those, we're going to flip over to the outside, at least the first two. So the parotid salivary gland is this big orange thing sort of on the cheek, underneath the ear. So the parotid salivary gland is on the side of the face. probably can already guess where the submandibular is gonna be underneath the mandible, so here we're on the side. You can feel that pretty easily too, that's exactly what it is there on the other side. So sort of orange-ish looking stuff, that is submandibular salivary gland. I'll tell you right now, when you look at the plastinates, there's not a whole lot that distinguishes these, and even in most people, they sort of merge and look like one big lump. They're separate for a couple of reasons. One, because they each have a different duct that leads into the mouth. But really, just turn the corner. That is, if it's on the side of the face, it's broad. If it's underneath in any way at all, it's submandibular. And where do you think sublingual is going to be? Under the tongue. So it's not actually on this model. It would be right on the midline, right at the base of the tongue. But it's on any of the older torsos you want to look at. So right underneath the tongue, right along the midline, is sublingual salivary